20. Welcome to another episode of the Erik Heijn Academy podcast. And this is the first podcast into a series I want to make about martial arts as a compass. And this is based on a book I wrote 2 years or 3 years ago. And this is this is part two. And in this, Laurien has also written a chapter, and I want to talk to all those great colleagues who have participated in the book. But for now, I'm going to talk with Laurien, and you have a very interesting background, a PhD in. You just told me in pain behavior, isn't it?
Yep. Yes, but
Pain
I didn't
behavior.
I didn't finish it. I
Okay.
I published a lot,
Yeah,
but for the gym I didn't finish it.
yeah. And you are a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, and very important also in my book, a trauma-informed coach. You do a lot of work in that, and you do also in your dojo yoga. So this is a very interesting combination, I think. And lately, I saw you in your own podcast talking about the ecological dynamics and the constraint-led approach. I'd love to talk with you about that, and if possible, also still about trauma-informed martial arts, so to speak. And well, thank you so much for talking to me, and also thank you so much for the chapter in the book.
Well, thank you so much for having me and asking me to contribute to
Yeah.
the book.
So, can you share a little bit of what you're doing at the moment?
At the moment, I'm recovering from a CLA camp that I hosted last weekend for
Oh,
only women and it was
aha.
international. It was a great success, so I'm still a bit recovering from that. At the moment, we are really focusing on Off the Zone, where I offer trauma-informed coaching and explaining why that, in my view, goes hand in hand with the constraints-led approach. So that's maybe something that we can dive into later.
Yes, yes.
And of course, our own school to grow it, to improve it, better coaching, better facilities. So we're really, busy to each time to update ourselves and hopefully then also what we offer.
So you have a martial arts
Yep,
school in Germany in.
in Munich.
Okay, so that's not a small place, eh? Great. And with your
My
with your
husband.
with your husband together, and
Yep.
what kind of arts do you practice there?
We do BJJ, MMA, and in yoga or more like mobility that we kind of changed it to. And I mean, we start from 3 years old. We have also like 3 to 5 year olds, but there we do much more movement exploration. So not also because we don't believe in early specialization. So there we really build all kinds of environments, parcours where they learn to use their body, see what they can do, what they can afford, opportunities they can create. And then later, when they're a bit older, then they can go either they go do something else
Yeah.
completely, or they do go into our striking, our kickboxing, or our grappling classes.
What made you to go on this path? Because once you lived in the Netherlands, you went to university, so uh, like intellectual, academic, and now I hear you're talking about the body exploration. What led you to this?
Well, I think when I started at the beginning, a not so nice experience that I had when I was younger, which was like sexually abused by a teacher in volleyball, and that led to PTSD for me. And people were like, yeah, Lorraine, you should learn to defend yourself. So you should start with martial arts, which in retrospect is up to a point a little bit victim blaming, but still, I loved martial arts anyway. So I was like, let's do that. Then when I started, the coach itself didn't understand trauma at all. Even though I explained, I was not safe. So if I would spar, and I was at that point the only woman, and I was then only 48 kilos, and Dutch people, as we know, they're not small. I am small and Dutch, but most guys are not. And they didn't want to lose from a girl. So I would have flashbacks, which means that I'm fighting internally somewhere, something, and somebody tries to submit me. And that was really a lot. So
Yeah.
then, but since my rational brain went offline, I could not stop it because I was somewhere else and I didn't have a coach or a training partner that realized they had to stop for me, basically. And I spoke, and that coach was like, yeah, you should just stop early or this and that. But that's very hard because you can't. At that point, I didn't understand so well yet how trauma all functioned. But then my studies led me to Oxford, waar ik ook studeerde. En daar ben ik mijn eerste yoga-lerares tegengekomen. En zij was trauma-informed. En dat heeft al zo'n paar zaadjes geplant in mijn hoofd destijds. En ik ben wel verder gegaan met BJJ daar. En daar had je ook wat meer kleinere mensen. En ofschoon ze niet per se trauma-informed waren, begrepen ze wel van af en toe moet je gewoon even bij het begin beginnen. En niet gelijk helemaal go hard, go home. En dat
Yes.
was voor mij eigenlijk heel goed. Dat ik ook merkte, oh, dus BJJ kan ook leuk zijn. En dat heeft gewoon allerlei goede zaadjes bij mij geplant. Toen terug afgestudeerd en toen voor mijn PhD naar Munich. Daar ben ik ook verder gegaan met BJJ. En daar heb ik dan mijn man leren kennen, want hij was met zijn 80 kilo de lichtste. En hij had al een zwarte band in traditioneel jiu-jitsu en gaf al in een club al kinderen les. En op een gegeven moment was er helaas sexual harassment in dat team naar mij toe. En we hadden
Also in that theme. Yeah.
ja, ja.
Ah,
Maar goed, het was andere. Dus dat toen ik
yes.
jonger was en dan had ik nog een keer. En ik heb er gewoon absoluut geen zin in. En mijn man wilde altijd eigenlijk al professioneel eigenlijk zijn eigen school openen. En dacht ik, why not? Dus als baby Blue Belt hebben wij dan onze BA Blue Belt hebben we onze school geopend. Met dan een trauma-informed approach. Dat wij het moet safe zijn voor iedereen die bij ons wil trainen. En ja, daar zijn we eigenlijk op groot op geworden. En zeker voornamelijk tijdens de COVID-lockdown. Heel veel scholen hebben natuurlijk heel veel mensen verloren. Wij hebben juist leden gewonnen vanwege onze approach. En toen hebben ook meer mensen gevraagd, wat doen jullie dan? Hoe kan dit? En dan hebben we Off the Zone gestart en we zijn begonnen met een online cursus waar ook andere coaches het kunnen leren hoe wij het doen en hoe zij dat voor zichzelf kunnen vertalen.
Wow, what a story. By the way, we went from English to Dutch.
Sorry, dat merk ik niet eens.
No, no, no problem. But we have to choose a language now.
Oké, let's do English.
Let's do English. Um, so to recap, because of a bad experience in your youth, you found out martial arts. That's
Ja,
true. Yeah. And you just told us that. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, yeah, because we're now on that topic. Do you have any advice, for example, for me, because I'm teaching physical education students at the University of Applied Sciences, and I know, especially for some women there, it's kind of frightening. Even the smallest, like grappling situation or sometimes some boxing situations, and I can see it in their face, I can see it in their reaction. But what is a safe trauma-informed martial arts lesson? Are there some rules to follow for general?
yeah. There are some guidelines. Tell them what to anticipate so that they know in advance what you're going to do. That already helps a lot because when they know that, okay, maybe it's become maybe a bit tougher, but at least when you know it's already less bad.
Yeah,
Two, choice. They always need to be the one in charge. If they do not want to do it, or if they want to do it up to a specific point, that is fine. So that you help them with also building self-autonomy and giving people a panic button. We know also from studies that when people are doing something very difficult, but you give them a panic button saying, if it gets too much, you can push this button and it will stop. Usually they don't even use it. But just the fact that they know it's there, that helps. So in academia, professors or assistant professors that say, if it really gets too stressy, too rough, this is my email or phone number, call me, is for instance a panic button. In a bit more academic sphere, on the mats, that can be that you take a drinking break, that you drink something, that you go out, no questions asked, that you as a coach also say, like, if you need a break, no questions asked. And that it's also normal, that nobody's gonna think like, huh, why is this person stopping?
yeah,
Like, so that would be kind of like the main guidelines. That if you add these in, that they just know what to anticipate, that they have choice, and that there is a panic button offered, then you usually should be already a lot easier. And then more content-wise, of course, is games. that you get the stakes low, and then we go deeper. I don't know whether you already want to dive into that.
No, but not into CLA, but into games maybe a little bit. It's difficult to do that without CLA. Well, for
Right.
example, last week I wanted to introduce a student into boxing, and instead of just learning the jab, I did a little game with her. Like I was doing slow motion with punching only left hand and so on. But I could already see some like
Mhm.
uh, that was even too much.
Did you go for the face?
Yeah. Yeah, but like she had boxing gloves, I had boxing gloves, and I just they did like this, and I told her to how
Mhm.
do you call it?
Parry, yeah.
Yeah, parry, and
Sometimes, but it is sometimes too much. But you can stick back. I mean, look, people like just to mention, you have great COA coaches, and then they're beginners. They don't even go to the head at all, and it still transfers if they later want to go to competition. So, for me, we have to see that sometimes what we see as super simple game can be full blown sparring for somebody else's nervous system,
yeah,
and we make a game out of it. So instead of that, touch shoulders. You try to touch hers, she tries to touch yours, and try to not be hit on the shoulders, because then you take immediately kind of the threat of getting punched in the face potentially, even if it's super soft, away, because the target is the shoulders.
yeah,
That's like one way how you can just make it a game. The stakes are lower because we know from neuroscience that learning and also healing, it takes place when our rational brain is online and we are in rest and digest.
hmm,
But when the sympathetic nervous system is activated, they cannot really learn, they cannot really listen, they cannot also not really make decisions, because that is like offline. It's okay when it's a little bit stressed, but we want to have it hover over. That's like what we want. So that means that when she flinches, she doesn't feel safe. Take a step back and make it really playful. Because
yeah,
usually we have the same. I had it yesterday with the camp wrestling. Many BJ people find wrestling or stand up in general very scary. I just made many games out of it. This attack, they had to, the ongoing game, either touch the lower back or the belly. So you create some angles and already some grip fighting. And they had so much fun. They were laughing all the time. And
yeah,
yet they were already doing some serious good grip fighting and making angles, what you need later if you want to go for a specific takedown or something like that. So just by making them laugh, they are relaxed and they're more open also to try out different things. So I'm like, when you notice that is too much, take a step back, but always have, you can make them laugh first, that they sweat a little bit, that they have
yeah.
fun in movement, and then it's much easier then to later go back to a jab towards the face that they have to parry.
But and maybe it's too soon in our discussion of conversation because I want to talk about constant led approach. But can you also argue that just traditional isolated training is also safe because you can if they can just make the punch on my glove
Mhm.
without attack without anything. Oh, my hand goes up. Do you see
That was
that?
good timing, yes.
I have no question, by the way. Yes, I have a question. Yeah,
You do.
yeah, I do. No, just a traditional way of doing a boxing jab from the perspective
Mhm.
of safe nerve system. What do you think of that?
I think not, because it's not representative.
Yeah, okay, from that
So,
perspective, yeah,
yeah, no, but also from a trauma informed perspective, because if I learn something isolated and then I try to apply it and it doesn't work, that's absolutely disheartening. Whereas when I always get immediate feedback, I know whether something works or not. And that helps
hmm,
much more with building self autonomy and confidence. Because if I don't know whether it really works, or I even if I make believe that if I drill this and this works and then it doesn't, that is disheartening and can do more harm than good. Obviously, I am biased because, I mean, we found COA through trauma informed coaching. That's how we found it before it became this big hype. So before Greg and others really made this big, we were already doing it. So for us, it was
yeah,
more like, okay, cool, we're not the only ones. But so I'm biased. I say this to the listeners.
yeah,
I'm massively biased, but I think there's no transfer. which means that if they ever would come in a situation where chances are very low that they will actually be able to do it, and that will do much more harm and bring more trauma. I had one somebody also reach out to me saying they work also with trauma informed approaches, and there was a girl that was training kickboxing, I believe, for some years, and then something happened when she was like a teenager, and she was just partying, and something happened, and she froze. And she was like, "Yeah, but what am I doing martial arts for when it doesn't work?" But they did some sparring stuff, but it was just step-by-step combinations and techniques. And we also know that if you look at actual striking matches, the combinations that they drill, you never see them
Hmm.
actually when they're fighting. So there is no transfer, and that is the issue. So whatever you do, try to do things that transfer, so that if they are under stress and duress, that the chances are high that they can still do it,
Yeah.
and that they also know in advance, I could already do it with resistance or some sort form of resistance.
Yeah. But that's a nice way of thinking. Thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about ecological dynamics in CLA. You already mentioned that it came on your path because of
Yeah.
trauma-informed coaching. Can you just explain for people with no background anyhow in ecological dynamics, and they are physical education students doing martial arts or BJJ instructors doing BJJ, of course.
Yeah.
What is CLA and what is different?
So it's so ecological psychology, ecological dynamics, it's an academic field of study. The constraints-led approach is a method they kind of came up with how we could put it into practice. I think that's one thing. Some people are like, huh, economical dynamics, COA, huh, what is different? So one is the academic field of study, where the scholars are doing their research and doing all these things, and COA is meant to see like what do we then need to put it in practice. Ecological dynamic psychology, it's about the interplay between the individual, a task, and the environment when it comes to movement. And they have this idea that the environment, or how we perceive the environment, will affect how we act in this environment. So if something comes very quickly, I don't know, when a bull runs to me, I'm most likely going to jump aside because I don't want that. Nobody taught me this. Nobody said to me, Laurien, if that ever happens, that will happen automatically. Or the same if I put my hand in the fire as a kid. When it hurts, I will take it back. I did not have a whole big process of thinking like, oh, this is fire. Fire is hot. Maybe I should know. That goes automatically. And that's where we couple our perception, and there comes an action.
Yeah,
That's how we kind of like what they believe in a very, I hope,
yeah,
simple terms what it is. That means for training that we then need to create an environment and give them a task that they then need to fulfill somehow. And this environment will give them specific constraints. If I am training outside on concrete, I will behave differently than when I have beautiful mats where I can crash on and
yeah,
not get bruised. It will change my behavior. If I train with somebody who is much heavier and bigger than me, I will also behave differently in striking. If I'm small, if somebody is super tall, I will have to also behave differently in order to get closer to this person. So the environment, it can be the person, and then the task, say, my task could be I want to get close to them to do XYZ or whatever. And so the environment, but also like a cage, how big is the mat space? That all has influence on how we behave. And that's what COA does, is to constrain specific environments so that behaviors we want to see emerges without us having to tell them step by step.
yeah. It's a kind
That's,
of
I think,
implicit learning.
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, okay, but you're not verbalizing a lot. You're constraining in an environment and you're giving a different task without talking too much. Is that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't talk much because I think that is just noise.
Yeah. Okay, so then we have the task, the environment, and the person, and it all influences each other. And that was a question from one of my students. If we take a simple example, like teaching a jab or a boxing technique, you can argue that a very very left on the continuum. You let them stand. You demonstrate the punch. They replicate just in isolation. How would teaching a punch looks like in contra that approach?
Well, first of all, and there I can refer to Till and some other coach I had on my podcast. They are the strikers. They are by far the experts, not me when it comes to striking specifically. I'm grappling. But there is always, when there's an attack, there's also always defense. You cannot separate them. And a jab, I mean, what does it do? Like that's the question. What's the functionality of a jab? What does it do?
Hmm.
Because that will massively give you the input you need to know to constrain a game. So with a jab, I can imagine you want to annoy them, you want them that they put their arms up, so maybe you could shoot or kick low,
Yeah,
whatever. I don't know.
yeah,
So, but it also means I need my partner to also do something. So if I just do a jab in the air and nothing happens, then there is no feedback. We need feedback so that we can adapt and respond to that. So if you could say something like, actually, I would probably like, because I saw a lot of the other questions, also when you want to shoot, but you could have a game like, okay, my goal is to keep you at a distance, and for that, I'm only allowed to use my leading hand, whichever
yeah,
is left or right, depending what you are. I'm only allowed to use a jab. The other player, they need to either shoot for a leg or whatever, get close to you. So if I say it's my goal to keep distance, and the other goal is to bridge that distance, I will start using something like a jab because
yeah,
that's the way. I don't need to hit them to keep the distance. But that's already how you can get an interaction that is representative. You will see this all the time also when you watch UFC or all these other matches. That's what they do. And that's where you have already two people playing. It's real. It doesn't have to be sparring level. It can be intense, doesn't have to be, but there is an interplay between two people in this environment, so we can adapt. When do I know when to throw a jab if nothing is happening to me?
yeah. So, and I did this. I have now a new 8-week course on the Academy of Physical Education. And I started exactly with this game. I just told them one person with his open hand touches the shoulder of the. Your goal is to touch the shoulder of the other person. The other person should come close. It was either to the side was a task, but also getting hold of one leg. So
Hmm.
there was that game.
Yeah.
What I found difficult, and maybe we can spar a little bit about it, that the intensity and the speed was so high
Mhm.
that the task never, how do you call it, especially with
Happened.
the boys, and they did not succeed because they were moving like 1,000 kilometers an hour and they could not even come close to each other. So, what did I do wrong?
I think it's a cueing problem.
Ah,
I don't know what you said, but there's a difference with internal and external focus.
hmm.
And typically, you want to use external focus so that it's really the focus on the task at hand. And with step-by-step instruction, it's usually internal focus because you want to put your right hand here, you do with your left this or whatever. But it's
Yeah.
internal focus. And also, by the way, from a trauma-informed perspective, I don't want people to have internal focus because I don't know where they go.
Hmm.
So I want to have an external focus. So it's more like, what task do I want to achieve on this person? Could be I want to raise the leg. I want to keep this person at a distance rather than saying, I mean, I have to think even because I don't even know how would I say this internalized, like you want your left hand to, or when you shoot, you want your left hand to go on the front that on that. It's just, it becomes already more confusing.
Yeah.
So we want to keep it in that regard pretty simple. Like that's what you want, the distance game. We don't have that issue. I know others also don't, but I know others also do that it then still. And then I think it's maybe, so it can be a culture problem that in general, not saying that you have a culture problem, but it can be that in general, it's a bit more a go hard, go home type of atmosphere.
Yeah.
So sometimes maybe you have to just first play a game to loosen them up a little bit.
Yeah.
And just that as long as you get the stakes low and it's much more about solving the problem and not winning, then it's the thing. When you say, okay, how many different ways can you solve this problem? Then they will already have to pause. And then typically, I'm also like, the higher the complexity of the game, the lower you want intensity to be.
Yeah, when I think back, I told them that if they touched the shoulder, they got a point, and if they touched the leg, the other person got a point. So it was a little bit competitive from the start, maybe.
But points are, you can, points are guides. I mean, I know Cal Jones is big on that. You
Yeah.
can use points to direct, but that's more like when you, I would use points if you want them to kind of go more for a specific target, but other targets are also good. Where you could
Hmm.
say, say I'm allowed to touch both shoulders and legs, say kneecaps, say that I would get 1 point if I tap the shoulder, but I get 5 points when I go for the leg, because then we don't know from each other what we are doing, so it already becomes a bit more representative.
Yeah.
But also, they still have choice because they still, I mean, when I can touch you 10 times and you only once my kneecap, so to speak, I would still be quote unquote winning. But essentially,
Yeah.
it's much more about hammering down to them. It's really about problem solving.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also think backwards. I could also, of course, constrain the environment in the sense that I could give, how do you call it? Make the mat some
Smaller. Yeah,
smaller. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, but and after that, so for example, they are doing that game, and I see a lot of nice solutions. People getting to the side, people getting to the legs. Um, at what point, what I do is it came from Straight Blast Gym from 20 years ago.
Mhm.
They had the three I's. It was introduce, isolate, integrate. And it was a kind of first play in solving the problem.
Mhm.
Then you see something, then you see some good solutions, uh, show it to the class, and then we practice the solution a little bit and move on to another. What is your thoughts about it? So we play in the game, you see some good solutions, and then
Well, when they do well, then I go to another game and focus on a different part of skill I think they need. Um, so that's also like, there's so many different pedagogies. Like, I don't think you need it unless it's so cool. You just want to show it. Like, there's nothing wrong with necessarily showing anything. Like, that's one of the things that the diehard eco bros think that you cannot show anything. Of course, I
hmm,
mean, sometimes when a student of mine sees something cool on Insta, whatever, if you want to play with it, by all means do so. But when you really talk about skill acquisition, when you see that they acquired that skill, then you can move on to a different skill.
and in your experience, when I do it, I see a lot of different a lot. Is it true? Yeah, I see different solutions from different people with different background, with different bodies. Um, well, I'm trying to frame this question, but is everything in your school then? Is everything okay? Is every solution good? So, because I see many different solutions, or is there a particular solution which
I
is
mean,
the,
like a human constant is that our bodies mechanically work the same. Okay, we have different ranges of freedom there, and but if you just go on like if we're also not necessarily talking about somebody who was maybe in an accident or was born with fewer limbs, but let's just say most people we have four limbs and we walk in the sagittal plane, we move in this one, and
yeah.
if that's a human constant, that means that when we are confronted with a problem, there are so many solutions most likely possible, but the ones I choose are dependent on my body size, my strength, and and how big or small or what the attributes are of the person I am dealing with. So, to me, as long as it works, it's fine. When it doesn't work, we need to find a new solution. So, how I do things, my husband will do differently in a similar situation, and that's fine. That's exactly what I want because I don't want carbon copies of me
Mm.
or of my husband because we all move differently. And that's, I think, what's very important to remember. I mean, some people I know in BJ like, yeah, bench pressing off, it's so stupid. He just can do it because he's strong. Yeah. But as long as it works, there's not necessarily wrong with it. Of course, there's the sliding scale where it becomes false positives. I mean, if there's a very big size disparity, sure. And that's indeed a false positive. But when this person can still do it on people the same size, also in competition, maybe whatever, a white belt, it works. I'm not gonna say it doesn't because clearly it does. But of course, as they progress, they meet people that can deal with that and it doesn't work anymore. Or maybe they get armbarred a few times very hard. Well, that's their time then to adapt. And then they
Yeah,
won't do that anymore. And then they start maybe working a bit more close, with the elbows closer to them. And that's how they really quickly adapt without me having to say much. And of course, if I see somebody in class getting quote unquote getting away with things that I know, like, yeah, nah, I can pair them up with somebody I know that will close it down.
yeah,
And that's how you can do it. Because if that is a good solution for them because they get out or they get the task done, they are doing their job.
yeah. Can you give an example of a very concrete example how you teach some BJJ skills in your school following the CLA approach? How does it look like?
Yeah, so let's do guard passing. Let's take
Yeah.
guard passing for example. So we know we can pass standing, we can pass on the knees, one knee, they're all different. And like with guard, like with striking, you can go over, under, around, and through. That's the same with the legs, with guard passing. It's not different. And if I want people to explore movement standing, then I say I want you to get somehow past the legs, chest to chest or chest to back connection, but you're not allowed to put your knees on the ground unless you're ready to get chest to chest or chest to back connection. Bottom player, I can either say, okay, you really want to focus on keep connections, being so connected as possible to your partner, so you stay in front of them. Or even I can like you're allowed to sweep or stand up or these things if I want to already bit more complicated. If I want top person to learn to go more through the legs and stuff, I'm like, I want you to pass with at least one knee on the ground. Or when
Mm.
I want double unders or over unders with two knees on the ground. That are like things where how I can constrain the 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 movements that they can do, and then they will explore within that area what is possible. And then in no time, you will see Toriando passes, you will see knee cuts, you will see these things. I mean, my school, they don't know these terms, they don't even know it, but they will do it.
Yeah. I'm also curious what in your experience, because, for example, take a BJJ curriculum, take the curriculum of Crazy Jiu-Jitsu, for example, eh?
Mhm.
Uh, you can argue that that curriculum is not an accident in the sense that it came it came from their experience, whatever teacher you choose, eh? But my real question is, in the end, whatever approach you follow, do you see is the end result purely what you see on the mat? Is it the same? Are they still doing the in the end, eh? Are they still doing
I don't know, we don't have a curriculum
okay?
because I mean, we have an idea of which positions that they need to do, but I mean, if you start with jiu-jitsu, it's most is the grip fighting because if you win the grip fights that, so I want them to be good in grip fighting. I want them to be good at standing up.
Hmm.
I want them to be good to get passing legs and pinning, and I want them to be good at isolating limbs.
Yeah,
That is more or less it. And if they can do these things, that so we look what happens. Like we had moments that we were very busy with a specific topic, and then when I'm like, okay, this looks really, really, really good. I mean, we have white belts that Alex and I we cannot pin. They can stand up. Like it's hard. Sometimes we feel like blue belts again, because they're just so good at it. But we never taught them and taught them how to do it step by step. They figured it out themselves. And then when I'm like, okay, so now they're really good at standing up. So our passing and our pinning is not so good. So now we're gonna focus on that. Then when that is fine, I'm like, okay, let's focus on isolating limbs. And each time we see where compared to the other things, when they get better at specific skills, and I see which are lacking, and then I'm like, okay, I want to up those. So we look much more what's happening in my class and base our
yeah,
monthly themes on that, what we see. Because it's a bit stupid when I just have a curriculum and the curriculum says, okay, now we should do arm bars. But actually, where I see where they are lagging behind is, I don't know, takedowns.
yeah.
So then I also really want to then cater to their needs, which is, oh, they need to learn more about takedowns.
Do you have any nice game to share with regard to grip fighting?
Yeah. I mean, gi or no gi?
Nogi.
No-gi. So one part that's still true also in no-gi, and that comes from Kel Jones, is controlling the lead hand, the power hand of your partner. Because when they don't have use of their power hand, a lot of their stand-up attacks are gone. But usually you want to get inside position or outside position so that you control their arms and hands have an angle. Games we played yesterday, for instance, is you want to get inside position. I don't care whether you have an underhook or collar tie, but the moment you have inside position, I want that you place your head somewhere on this line and hold it as long as you can. These are also games that Greg Souders plays a lot, and you want to hold that. The partner, of course, wants to do the same thing. So it's an ongoing grip battle, but that you not only realize when you have the advantage so that you could go further for another action, but that you can also hold it.
Yeah.
That you can hold the control. Then later you can add things saying like, if you first you have to get inside or outside position. Once you have that, then you're allowed to lift a leg or go for and head and arm position or go for a body lock. And then you can build on that. And later you can do things like, okay, you start with a body lock and your goal is to bring the hands of your partner to the ground and keep them grounded.
Yeah.
These are like all kinds of games that all have to do with grip fighting, that gives you the advantage. And we notice that people are not afraid of falling or of all these things because they have clear goals. Like yesterday, I taught this wrestling class where we did part of these games. And I know that I said, like, I know many people are apprehensive of judo and wrestling. It's like, but I promise you it will be fun and you won't be scared. But since they had such a clear focus of which conditions they had to fulfill before they could go for the winning condition, whatever that was, they weren't bothered by the other things. And in the end, when I asked them, was it scary? They said, like, no, not at all. This was really fun.
Mm.
And I think, and especially grip fighting, also in the beginning, this is my doggy having an opinion. When especially with grip fighting, you can keep yourself pretty safe because we have beginners or white belts that their grip fighting is so good that when we get sometimes visitors that maybe blue belts or purple belts, but they didn't focus on grip fighting so much that they don't get through. If they get through, clearly they have the upper hand, but often they don't. And that's for them super frustrating. But it's just like, yeah, when I control you, you can't do so much. Like if I just get up, you cannot pass me and you cannot pin me.
Yeah. When did you start this game-based approach?
5 years ago, because that was just before also COVID, when we had lady self-defense courses, we kind of unknowingly played already games because we thought self-defense, there's no rules, there's no rev, you don't know. So I don't want to teach them tricks. I want to put them in situations where they have to solve problems. And we then realized that after 8 weeks, they were growing and getting quicker so much better than people that were doing the technique-based training in a regular classes. So if they would stay and would go into a regular class, I'm like, why are they so good based for
Mm.
the amount of training? And that just got us thinking and going deeper because we knew for trauma from coaching that I want to keep the parasympathetic nervous system activated. We knew with through games we can keep the stakes low. And that's how we just stumbled upon ecological dynamic psychology. And then we were like, okay, we never look back because we already saw without kind of knowing it how much better it was.
Yeah. Before I ask you about your challenges in CLA, I want to ask just for the study geeks amongst us. You talk about the parasympathetic nervous system
Hmm.
being online while playing.
Yeah.
Um, i- in competition, I can imagine it's the sympathetic nervous system, or am I totally wrong?
Well, you kind of don't want that. Like
Okay.
if you have students that compete and they say, "But coach, I didn't hear you," then they were pretty much offline. So there's a difference between intensity and kind of losing control in the sense that you can't hear anymore. Um, there's a fun game you can play actually for the strikers, just to overload the nervous system and to see whether you're still active. It's just like one holds a pad and you have like, I don't know, three people around it, and they just have to give it all on. It doesn't matter what they do. And each time where you say switch, they have to change and the other one does it. And sometimes you can have another person walking around and they try to like, I don't know, tap them or something. So also some spatial awareness. But then what overloads systems that the pet holder gives them simple mathematical equations.
Oh yeah.
And if you do that and you can't do it, then you know you're not aligned. But then you also cannot listen to what coach says in competition. Now, the best or the easiest people for me to coach and competition are those that remain online, that they, even though it's super intense physically, they can still listen because they are still aware of what's happening. And that's also where decision making happens. So that's why some people, when they get aroused, that they see red, what some people say, but then they can't hear or listen, but they also cannot make rational decisions anymore. And
Yeah.
what you want to train your people in general is that they still can, even when it's intense. So intensity per se does not mean that you go into a sympathetic nervous system.
Okay. What are the current challenges for you in using the CLA approach in the sense, are there any things you want to get better in?
Better
Yeah.
cueing, understanding what I'm looking for, because I need to understand the game of grappling so good that I know what I want them to look for. Because what we help that I'm a game designer. I don't even feel myself anymore like an instructor, but I'm a game designer. But I need to help them where to look. But then I need to understand it first.
Yeah.
And what I noticed, like when we started using it like 5 years ago, with first we created games that would lead to one specific solution to a technique. But that's not what CLA is. That was still like very linear type of thinking. And what helped us a lot is understanding invariance. And I know that others like Cal Jones and all, they're like, yeah, they're not important, but they were important for me to
What are
change.
they invariants, by the way?
So there's also, of course, always a discussion, but invariants are things that kind of must happen.
Ah,
Not what you would like to happen, but something that must happen in order to get Baba. So with an armbar, an invariant is that I need to, to break it. It needs to be fixed,
yeah.
and then I need to have this breaking force that
Yeah.
must happen. If one is not there, my shoulder can move, my arm will not be broken.
Yeah.
That is something that must happen in order to do that. A precursor would be that I need then to control these endpoints, the shoulders, the wrist, as a precursor. That is not an invariant, but it's a precursor to what I need in order to get to breaking something that is straightened, that is. So it helped me rethink what jiu-jitsu is, because when you pass, why are underhooks good? What does it afford? Like, what opportunity do specific grips give me, or specific thing? What does it give me? And that's where invariants help. When I realize, what do I really, really need or must
Mm.
have or must do in order to get further or do XYZ. And then we got out of thinking in techniques where I kind of push the play button and hope for the best. And I started to understand more on a deeper level what it is that we're doing movement wise. And that was a process. I mean, it took us definitely 1.5 years to step by step get a better understanding. And even after 5 years, I still feel that we are scratching the surface, because there's so much to learn also regarding perception, regarding so many, and also in academia, there's so many things that are still unclear.
Mm.
So what I do now may be very different from what I'm going to do later. So we just keep on reading books and articles, and also connecting with other COA based coaches, or contemporary approaches, skill acquisition, as some would like to prefer to have it called, just to learn, because my cueing can always get better. My understanding of what we're actually doing can always get better. I need to take into account dilemmas if I want specific behaviors to occur. If I want to say what we also did we did heel hooks. A heel hook, it's a bent type of submission. One way to kind of defend it is to straighten it. But when you straighten it, there can also be straight, like knee bars or foot locks. So there is a dilemma, because if I attack something that's straight, then usually to defend it, you will bend it. But then there's again the heel hook threat. So now we are in this next phase where I really want to create cooler games where there's much more dilemmas in place, where people start to see and chain and really understand what they are doing, what is happening.
Do you think that the best grapplers, like take for example Gordon Ryan, do you think he's a how do you say it? Is he a playful? What do we do? Is he playing?
I don't know. I don't know him, but I know that others do. I
Yeah.
mean, I know that Jose Gracie said that because he had only one point, what, white and blue belts where he was training with, that he said like, yeah, I am just usually live training.
Yeah.
So in typically, I think people that do a lot of live training,
Yeah.
that they also typically are playful. I mean, no, I know that Gary Tonin, he often also put himself in arm bars, also with
Yeah.
lower levels, and to see how far he still could go. Would tap a lot of times. We also tap a lot of times in our classes,
Yeah.
just to see like this to get good at these gray zones. I do think that the best are playful. If I also look at Muay Thai fighters, they're always very playful when you watch
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Finding solutions for problems, eh?
Hmm.
Kind of in a playful manner. So you already talked about it in your own podcast, but maybe for the Dutch BJJ practitioners, also nice. Um, in some schools, there is an emphasis on positional sparring,
Yeah,
like from the mount to the guard and so on. And sometimes it is brought as playful. It is playful, by the way, but you talked about in the podcast, it's not the same as the
no,
constraint-led approach, or
I
is it?
think it's not the same, but it's very useful.
Yeah, yeah,
Usually how I explain it is that CLA is really skill acquisition. You want to explore, you want to figure out what's all possible. And with positional sparring, then that the skills you learn, you want to apply. So even if that could be 10 times the same knee cut because you are so good in getting the right conditions for it, by all means do it. But then you're not exploring so much anymore, which is perfect for competition. Just in general, it's good to do it anyways, that apart from exploring and skills, to also really test it and then in a bit, maybe a bit more competitive setting.
yeah,
So
yeah.
the
Okay,
focus is different.
yeah. Focus is different. What are you passionate about today in the martial arts training? Of course, CLA, but what things do you want to explore? Are you really passionate about?
At the moment, I'm really passionate about better kids classes. I mean, it's also, of course, that COI based, but I feel we can do it better. So we're really exploring with having kind of the whole game of jiu-jitsu more or less in one class, that they do a bit of stand-up, bit of passing or pinning, and some bit submission, and then they have, oh, and we also add much more positional sparring,
Hmm.
so that they pretty, because we noticed that at first we could have like a theme per day per class, and that some new kids then were good at that, but they didn't do the whole cycle of the game of jiu-jitsu. So they would then, we did start with takedowns, and then when they would throw, they would of course let go of the person and stand up, which makes sense. But of course in jiu-jitsu you want to continue, so we realized that we need to make sure they understand when the loop is closed, so to speak. So we're like busy now with yeah, improving that.
Kids classes,
Yeah,
yeah. There's a Belgian instructor. I also have his book, A Very Playful Way to Grappling in BJJ. I forgot his name, but I will send it to you.
yeah, please.
Do you have any things to share with us about how to best study the CLA approach and trauma-informed martial arts training? Are there some good books, podcasts you say you have to listen or read this for inspiration?
There is one book written, I can also, about trauma informed and jiu-jitsu. There's
Yeah. Oh,
one.
yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one to start. Of course, of the zone, we ourselves we have online resources with like a 19-minute free course. It's like free videos about principles, like the guidelines for trauma from coaching, but also what do you do if somebody has a panic attack or a traumatic trigger? How do you bring them back safely? Because there's a lot of do's and don'ts. That's we have all for free and some other resources. So that would be a great place to start. We also have a paid course where you go much deeper into it, how you also can use martial arts as a way to kind of override the stress response, the fear response, how you can do that. And of course, more coaching, development, and all that stuff. But that's then the paid. But we have also a lot of free resources. And there are also others. I mean, you have Army of Survivors, you have the Sports Examiner, you have safe sports. And there they also go into a lot of safeguarding, where they also definitely touch upon trauma-informed coaching as well, as they could kind of go hand in hand. As regards to CLA, you really will have to start with reading some literature. I'm sorry, because there are just terms that we use to make it simpler to talk about the same thing because it's still an academic field. So I think it is just only listening to podcasts and seeing what a Greg would do, what a Kabir would do, what a Cal would do. When you try to copy it, and if you don't read what's and see what's happening in your room because you have to adapt what happens in your training room, it's not going to work as well as intended. So Rob Gray has a book, How Learn How to Move, and he has and they're also like his books, they're all also an audio book, so you can also just listen to it if you don't want to read, which I can really recommend. And there he does explain the basics that you at least understand when we talk about affordances, when we talk about invariance, when we talk about representative learning design, and all these things, because it's also too much to unpack in one podcast. But that I would really recommend. It's really this 80-20 thing. Put in the effort. It's not easy in the beginning, but afterwards it will be so rewarding and it will really become easier. For the rest, connect. People like Kel Jones are always very happy when you reach out, and he coaches also people. We coach people, and my husband and I, we also help and support coaches to implement it. So there's also one-on-one things possible depending like what kind of style or person you like to work with. So that's what I would recommend. And also pick something. If you see something cool, game-wise on Instagram or whatever, play with it in class because in the end you have to just also experiment with
Yeah.
it. And so, and also be not be afraid to making mistakes. Don't be afraid that things may not work. I mean, sometimes I have a game in mind that in my brain works well, and then I play it and I'm like, oh, this doesn't work at all. I have to change
Disaster.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also, yeah.
But also my students notice. I say also, yeah, I'm gonna try something new. Okay, cool. And they help me also. They think, yeah, I think maybe if we do this and that. So also don't be afraid that people or your students think that you're not legit. They
Yeah.
actually think you're more legit also when they see that you do not know everything and that you're also trying to improve. So that's what I would
Yeah.
give with to the listeners.
Can I ask you some small questions from in the end?
Sure.
And the first one is a dysregulated nervous system as a consequence of, for example, trauma or developmental trauma, is there a way to put the nervous system to rest in the end? Or
Mhm.
yeah, that's I think a question.
So if there's like a say mental first aid situation on the mat, you want to interrupt it. And for that, we have this protocol, but mostly is like make sure their eyes are open. Do not touch them. Please don't ever touch people because you don't know where they are. When they can communicate with you and they want touch, by all means, touch them. But before they're there, they look at you and their back don't. And then we start what we call reorientation activities that we bring them back. It can be asking their name, where they are, how old they are. It can be giving them something to hold, a pebble or a belt, a glove, I don't know, something that they can describe and feel something, having them make fists. They need to get back into their bodies so that there are ways that you interrupt it and gently get them back. There are many, there's also this, 5 things you can see,
Yeah.
these kind of things that can all work. Of course, every person is different, so it's always a bit trial and error, but that would be like where you would start is like not touching them, make sure their eyes are open, and reorientation activities.
And then the follow-up question is, can we as human beings overcome trauma in a way that our nervous system, for example, I had a very violent upbringing,
Hmm.
living on the streets, a lot of violence, but and I still feel it in my nervous system because I'm now 55, but I'm still a little bit like alert all the time.
Yeah.
Um, do you think we can overcome this unrest?
I don't know. I mean, I also have this unrest that I'm more alert with these things. But I think I mean, people like Gabor Mate also is like, it's not about, the question you should ask yourself is not whether you can get over it, but whether it has daily impact on your life.
Hmm.
Because most of the time, it doesn't. It's there, but it
Yeah.
does not. I can just live my life and it doesn't impair me. It doesn't affect me. Like if you feel that something happens and something comes up and therefore you don't go out or you stop doing things, then it has control over you. So you want to have control over
Yeah.
that. And I think that is the more important battle, so to speak, what we should wage, because in that regard, we can still have a good, fulfilling life despite what happened to us.
Yeah, that's great. So the last one is if you have the opportunity to choose a guest for your podcast, and you can choose from any age. I mean, you can choose from history, you can choose jiu-jitsu, whatever topic, but what would be the greatest guest on your podcast to
Hmm.
have a conversation with?
I have to think about it for a moment because I have so many different reasons why I would ask many different people.
Yeah, also. I would love to talk with Haley Gracie or with Hickson, maybe more with Hickson Gracie. I would love to.
I really, I mean, as an historian, I would love to talk with people like Cicero of the past, also just to
Mm,
hear how they would speak Latin, because at the end of the day, we don't know how they really pronounced it. We don't know. So for that is a thing. But also for my podcast itself, I I would be interested to speak to, for instance, a wrestling coach of ancient Greece.
ah,
How did they train? What
yeah,
were their methods? What did they do? That's what I would like to know. It doesn't have to be somebody famous. Just what would a decent grappling coach in the in ancient past, what were their regimens? How did they train? That's what I would like to know.
wow. Maybe with AI we can do it
You
in
could
the
do.
future. Okay. Did I forget to ask you something, Lou?
I don't I don't know. People are always very welcome to reach out to me or my husband. We really like to connect and also help other people where we can. And I think, yeah, that's it from my side.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience and your wisdom. And I will put the show notes into the on the web page and see you again hopefully in the future. Thank you for sharing all this and thank you for listening. I will say goodbye and Laurina, I would love to have a little after the podcast talk. Bye bye until next time.